Good morning, everyone. Very happy to see you again. Thanks for being patient while I managed to get myself together to be here almost on time. So we'll just start with our opening prayers as yesterday. Page 1. Altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. The action bodhichitta prayer. For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Generating bodhicitta. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. And the short refuge prayer. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. For immeasurables, may all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. The offering of the Mandala. An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms, if I bring them all to offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body and joints and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine. By offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping. Completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial, the supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood. Om Guru Deva Dakini Rata Mandala Pratitsa Soha. Supplication to the Guru. Namo, the Guru, the utter purity of all appearance and existence. I offer all appearance and existence arisen as the primordial ground. I supplicate you. May the three realms be completely liberated. Please grant blessings to empty samsara from its depths. Lord with 5 omniscient wisdoms, crown ornament, kind one with loving nature, precious protector of beings, heart of all Buddhas, inexpressible by words or thought, I supplicate you from the core of my mind. Bless me from within the state of dharmata. Bless me to realize this mind, primordially pure and unborn, as the unfathomable dharmakaya. Please turn the wheel of the dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles, and the teachings common to both, according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. And the Shantideva, 4 lines. May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed. May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed. May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that afflicts the living be instantly and permanently healed. And now we'll recite the 37 Bodhisattva practices, and if you have the text, please recite along with us. Namo Lokeshvaraya. While seeing that all phenomena neither come nor go, you strive solely for the sake of all beings, Supreme Guru and Protector Chenrezig. At all times I respectfully pay homage to you with my body, speech, and mind. The perfect Buddhas, source of all benefit and happiness, arise from having accomplished the true Dharma. Since that depends on knowing the practices, I shall explain the way of Bodhisattvas. Having now gained this great ship of fortune, freedom and fortune so difficult to find, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence, listen, reflect, and meditate day and night without distraction. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Attachment to loved ones churns like water, hatred for enemies rages like fire. In the darkness of ignorance, one forgets what to adopt and what to avoid. Abandon your homeland. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When negative places are abandoned, disturbing emotions will gradually decline. Without distractions, attention to virtue naturally grows. When without essence, do not be proud. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If the enemy, your own anger, is not tamed, subduing outer enemies will only make them increase. Therefore, subdue your own mind with the army of love and compassion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Sensory pleasures are like salt water. The more you drink, the greater your thirst. Abandon at once all things that give rise to clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. The way things appear is your own mind. Mind itself primordially transcends fabricated extremes. Knowing just this, do not create concepts of subject and object. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When you come across things that attract you, like beautiful rainbows in summertime, do not regard them as real and abandon clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. All suffering is like the death of your child in a dream. How exhausting it is to hold illusory appearances as real. Therefore, when you meet with difficult circumstances, see them as illusory. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When even one's body must be given up when aspiring for enlightenment, what need is there to mention material things? Therefore, practice generosity without hope of reward or karmic results. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If you lack moral discipline, you cannot accomplish even your own purpose, so wanting to achieve the purpose of others is truly absurd. Therefore, protect your discipline without concern for worldly existence. This is the way of a bodhisattva. For bodhisattvas who desire a wealth of virtue, all harm is like a precious treasure. Therefore, without hostility, be patient with everyone. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even hearers or solitary realizers who accomplish only their own purpose strive as if putting out a fire on their head. Seeing this, practice with diligence the source of good qualities for the sake of all beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Disturbing emotions are destroyed by insight grounded in calm abiding. Knowing this, cultivate meditative concentration that purely transcends the four formless absorptions. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Without wisdom, the other five perfections alone are not enough to reach complete enlightenment. Thus, combined with skillful means, develop the wisdom that does not distinguish among the three spheres. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Unless you examine your own confused ideas, you might look like a practitioner but not be acting like one. Therefore, always examine yourself and abandon confusion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If you're driven by disturbing emotions and talk about another bodhisattva's faults, it's actually to your own detriment. So don't mention the faults of those who've entered the great vehicle. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Concern for gain and respect causes conflict and a decline in the activities of learning, reflecting, and meditating. So abandon attachment to your circle of friends, relations, and benefactors. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Harsh words disturb others' minds and thus diminish the practice of a bodhisattva. Therefore, abandon harsh speech, which is unpleasant to others. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When disturbing emotions become habitual, it is difficult to reverse them with antidotes. Thus, the soldier of mindfulness wields antidotes as weapons and destroys disturbing emotions such as attachment the moment they start to arise. This is the way of a bodhisattva. In brief, wherever you are and whatever you are doing, always examine the state of your mind. Act to accomplish the purpose of others through constant mindfulness and awareness. This is the way of a bodhisattva. With the wisdom of threefold purity, dedicate all the virtue gained from having made such effort toward enlightenment. Dedicate it to clear away the suffering of infinite beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. So let's do all that, and not do all that says not to do, and do all that says to do. Let's just say that this is the way we'll proceed. Once having said that, it becomes like one of those vows that you then think, well, I have to fully master this immediately and not turn away from it ever and never forget many of the verses and so on. Yes, that would be excellent. I highly recommend that course of action and commitment, but we're human beings, and we have bodies and minds that have been habituated through many lifetimes and many experiences, even in this lifetime, to be lazy and to be self-doubting and to be grasping to delicious, delightful appearances and turning away momentarily from more subtle commitments that we've made. So the bodhisattva is advised to practice gently the stages of the path, gently. Sometimes gently with a sharp blade, sometimes gently with a very self-aware recognition of limitations and potentials. But the gently isn't so that we are not working ourselves. On the path of the bodhisattva, we're working ourselves. We're right at the edge at all times. The edge being not a precipice, but a welcome reminder. And we're working to be alive, awake, and aware, if I might put it that way. Fully living our lives is in no way a withdrawal from life to be on the bodhisattva path. It's a steady deepening engagement with the life that we're all leading here together in the realms of existence. What we're engaged with is the beings. We're engaged with our purpose to lift ourselves and all other beings into the paths of truth and love, which are the paths of the Bodhisattva and the paths of all Buddhas that have ever attained. And we want to be as awake in every moment as we're capable of being. And to be awake in every moment as we're capable of being means very directly put, to look straight at our own mind's functioning, its condition, its crazinesses, and not to turn away from the opportunity that that presents in any given moment to come into a fuller or more refined alignment with our true intention, with our highest purpose as bodhisattvas. The awareness comes in, alive, awake, and aware. The awareness comes in because it is our awareness, our capacity to be aware in the relative frame that allows us to see when we are walking directly on our path and when we're momentarily or for an extended period veering into another way. Habit is heavy. You know, we talk about habituation of patterns that are not necessarily those we want to carry forward, but habit is heavy. It's like a big blanket when you're struggling in deep water sometimes. You'll find yourselves, really I'm speaking very much from experience, we will all find ourselves weighed down by our habituations, our habits. The moment you see that, you're not in it. What sees your confusion is your clarity. What sees the ignorance is the wisdom. Do you think you would like to write that down? Or maybe just be sure the person next to you will remind you? Because that's a teaching directly from Garchen Rinpoche to me at a time when I needed to hear that. He just said, Barbara, what sees your confusion is clarity. Because the relative is always arising within and inseparable from the ultimate, from the absolute. And awareness with a capital A is a word that we use to refer to the absolute. It's also with a small a, I mean, you don't have to punctuate it that way to write it that way, but just to differentiate verbally, it's also our normal, ordinary, everyday capacity to see clearly not just what's outside, apparently outside, but our inner experience, meaning our mind. Meaning our mind, the driver of our cart. We don't want to fall out of the cart. We want to, this little metaphor is going to fall apart faster than the cart. So anyway, the mind is in charge. So we want to be in charge of the mind. Awareness is the we. We want to be in charge of this mind that we're familiar with as our everyday companion. We want to be in charge of that. Let us increasingly give awareness the role and the responsibility of showing us the mind that we are in at a given instant and how to work with that, how to lift it, how to lighten it, how to bring light into it, how to amend it, how to shift it, how to celebrate with it, how to recognize when we're in clarity and recognize when we're in confusion. Okay? So that's what we're going to be working with this morning. I wanted to give you some information about karma yesterday, and we sort of soared, shall I say, out of time. And so this morning, I'd like to speak to karma a bit. In fact, a message has just come in with a question that is one of the things I wanted to address. And I have to make very clear here, I am not an expert on karma. But I have developed some, not expertise, but some willingness to look at my own experience in order to understand karma. And I have great compassion for those of us who have grown up in Western societies, who have a really, we might want to say, a stubborn misunderstandings about what karma actually means. People, I've known so many people who use the concept of karma as a way of, I don't want to sound harsh here, having just spoken about harsh speech, but as a way of, as a means of self-congratulation and self-justification. That looking at somebody doing something they don't like and saying, well, their karma is going to get them, or something like that, so that they're setting themselves up as the arbiter. Of course, everyone's karma is going to get them, including the arbiter, or the so-called arbiter. Karma is about, it has nothing to do with punishment. It has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with the mind that says to itself, oh, he or she will get their just desserts. That's a mind that is kind of relishing the thought of bad fortune coming to somebody who's crossed them or who's, may hurt them in some way. I mean, this kind of mind I recognize in myself. I recognize it in friends, people who would never want harm to come to another person. Sometimes this formulation about karma might jump out of the mouth. And it's, in our society, I mean, American society most particularly, we are a litigious people, meaning we like lawsuits. And we have this way of thinking about being wronged or harmed, that, or about our own suffering or discomfort, let me just go from suffering to discomfort, as if I'm suffering financially or in my physical well-being or my life circumstances, I ought to be paid for that. Right? This is the way a litigious society understands karma. It's somebody else's fault, often. And if we think it's our own fault, and we're being judgmental and harsh and punitive about it, we're still operating on the, if I'm suffering, somebody else ought to be paying me for that. So we're still using that construct. But karma is really not like that at all. If you ever have the opportunity to sit with His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche in teachings, he will speak about karma at some point during that time. And you will hear a way of speaking about, a way of understanding karma that is so different from what we have been exposed to in our culture. And it has honestly changed my life to hear him speak of karma and to contemplate, to really think about what he says and how he says that. And I would actually like to read you, in this discussion of karma, please bear with me, in our book called Brave, Generous, and Undefended, I did take care to communicate about karma in the way I want to, and I would like to read a few sections of that particular chapter. It's verse number 8 in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, rather than rely on my memory or my spontaneous expression, because it's more precise between these covers than it is always in my mind. But one thing I specifically want to be sure I read to you is something about Rinpoche's way of communicating about karma. First of all, you may have heard Garchen Rinpoche say that we will never, in this or any lifetime or in any moment, this or another moment in this lifetime, we will never experience anything that we have not laid down a seed of cause for. Nothing will come into our experience that is not our own creation. And when people hear that kind of a teaching, sometimes they react with, oh, that's called blaming the victim. There is no victim. There's no perpetrator. There is cause and effect, a natural law. This is not a Buddhist principle. It's a teaching that in the Buddha Dharma is very refined and very deeply developed, but it's not a dogma that belongs to a certain religion or a certain way of view. It's a natural law that obtains anytime, any place for anyone. It's the law of cause and consequence. So when Rinpoche says that we will never experience anything that we haven't laid down cause for, that's what he's addressing. That nothing arises without a cause, and nothing in our experience is arising without a cause that we have created. And I'm going to speak more about cause in a minute, but I want first for you to hear this particular, and some of you have heard this many times from me because it's just a striking story about a teaching with Rinpoche that has had a huge impact on my way of understanding life and karma and everything in between. So Garchen Rinpoche vividly showed in a Sangha gathering before a planned trip to Tibet how we never experience anything that we haven't set cause for. When he told us that if he returned to Tibet, he might be imprisoned again. The students were weeping and imploring him, don't go, oh Rinpoche, don't go. If they're going to put you back in prison, don't go, stay here. And Rinpoche just smiled. I'll never forget that smile. He just smiled and said, well, that shows you don't understand karma. And the students called out to him, but if you have the karma to go back to prison in Tibet, stay here where you're safe, don't go. He said, that shows you really don't understand karma. If I have the karma to be thrown into prison again and I stay in America, they're going to throw me in prison in America. And then I wrote here what I want to share with you about karma before we talk about any of the details. This pith teaching fills me with gratitude and joy. I can trust in karma. I am safe in karma. Nothing is alien to me, and I am no victim. Any suffering I experience, I have chosen by my own prior activity, and I can now choose how I take it. And if I am in the state of love and compassion, I cannot cause further harm to myself or to others. Bodhichitta is the ultimate protection of every being. We are held in the light play of the two truths, absolute and relative. Absolutely, the law of karma is itself empty of any solidity, while at the same time it is the law of the land here in all the realms of existence, operating through the subtlest details of the minds and actions of sentient beings. Dilgub Chense Rinpoche said, relative truth functions inexorably within absolute truth. A thorough realization of the empty nature of all phenomena never led anyone to think that positive actions do not bring happiness or that negative actions do not bring suffering. And Garchen Rinpoche's understanding of this is so fine, so precise, that he can say a sentence like nothing I had ever heard until I heard that sentence. He can say, I have great faith in karma. I have great faith in karma. And we speak of faith as a way of saying that we know that we can rely on, like a child has faith in the parent, knowing that the child can rely on the parent. We have faith in our gurus, knowing that we can rely upon them. We have faith in love, knowing that it brings happiness to ourselves and others. But I've never heard anybody else say, I have great faith in karma. It's an expression of love to have faith. Imagine saying, just for a minute, say to yourself in your mind or out loud if you're not self-conscious, say, I love karma. I love karma. That's what Rinpoche is saying when he says, I have faith in karma. It is, when we take upon ourselves the responsibility to choose our actions of body, speech, and mind based on whether they will be bringing happiness for beings or suffering for beings, we are also taking upon ourselves the, I want to use the word righteous here, I know not a word I usually use, the righteous responsibility of bringing our actions, again, of body, speech, and mind, especially of mind, into accord with what is true for all beings everywhere in all times, and that is that love and compassion and good-heartedness and kindness do bring happiness, and cruelty and harshness and a mind of greed and self-grasping will always bring suffering eventually, maybe not right in the immediate sphere of your life, but it will eventually bring that. The responsibility to choose wisely then what brings good and what brings ill is the liberating responsibility of beginning to take on joyfully and gratefully and with faith the active engagement with choosing one's karma. We're choosing it all the time, but not always consciously. To start to choose our karma consciously is to start changing the world that we're creating moment by moment. And the question that came in from one of the Sangha members in California relates us back to the discussion of pandemia yesterday. Would you consider this global pandemic to be collective karma? Is there such a thing as collective karma? And I rely again on Rinpoche for understanding that with fineness, very refined understanding, and for helping me to do the same with his explanation that there are two universes, basically. There's the inner universe of beings, sentient beings, the inner universe of thoughts, of emotions, of bodily process, of aspirations and dreams and regrets and sorrows and so on. That inner universe is our individual karma has created that and is always creating that, our inner universe. The outer universe, the world that we live in, remember yesterday I spoke of the term bioresonance and how there's a bioresonant co-creative relationship between the mind of beings and the surroundings of beings, the physical surroundings of beings. So the outer universe that we live in, we don't usually think that we're creating that, but that we are creating, and we are creating that collectively. That is the manifestation of the karma of all of us together. So when we look at pandemia, when we look at a pandemic, experience like the one we're in presently, and we remember that Rinpoche said this was created, the cause of this particular pandemic, this particular virus, was created by the emotional streams or thought forms of anger, hatred, and jealousy. We can say, yes, I'm going to own my part of that. It's not someone else's anger, hatred, and jealousy that creates an event of this kind. It's ours, all of ours. So the response of the Bodhisattva in hearing that can be gratitude. Oh, I have faith in karma. That information empowers me. Now I know what to do. Now I know how to handle my own experience in this situation, because I do not wish to sow again any small seed even of the causes that have brought about this enormous worldwide suffering for countless beings. So it's not about guilt and innocence. It's not about crime and punishment. It's about seeing, recognizing, and taking responsibility. So that's the essence of empowerment. So we acquire agency in the moment that we recognize ourselves as agents. This is good news. This is good news. This is not heavy. This lightens the burden of being a person who's stumbling around still. This lightens the burden. It makes things very, very clear about how to think about cause and consequence in your own life, how to have compassion for those who are creating negative cause and therefore will experience negative consequence in their lifetimes. It can be a very heart-opening recognition, this recognition that we will never experience anything that we have not created cause for, either in our inner universe or in the outer universe that we all share. We share the co-creative responsibility for this outer universe. And the outer universe I'm gazing at, here just adjacent to the camera, there's a window right behind the camera, and it's showing beautiful rolling hills covered in juniper and other of the desert plants and pinyon pine. And then beyond and they're slightly green now, these hills, because it's spring, we've had a fair amount of rain. And soon they'll be golden, and then later in the summer, when the drought continues and deepens, it will become brownish. But at the moment it's green, and beyond there is a valley in which the same kind of vegetation appears, but the coloration of the land begins to shift. There's a kind of reddish tone in the land. We're looking at rocks at a further distance. And further still are plateaus, and then great cliffsides that are shining white at the moment. Sometimes they look red, but they're shining white with the angle of the sun. So as I'm sitting here speaking with you, and this is in my line of sight, I'm aware that all of this we have co-created, as well as having co-created a pandemic that has the potential to harm and also the potential to open lines of inquiry and thinking and action that are very beneficial. And it's up to us. There's nobody to turn to. It's up to us. Each of us finds a way that we can bring about the inner and the outer universe that are like last night's starry skies, grand and beauteous and unfathomable. In order, that's enough for the moment. I might come back and read you a little bit more at some point, but for the moment, this moment that we're in right now, let's just acknowledge what is on its face quite evident, that we can't take responsibility for something we can't see. And I mean see innerly, I don't mean see with your visual eyes, because blind people see innerly the same way sighted people do, as well as hearing people hear innerly the same way hearing people do. So to mount the horse of responsibility, we need really good a really good ability to see the mind that will guide that horse. I think I'm going to have a metaphorical day, so just bear with me. They often fall apart in the middle. It's all right. I'm used to it. And sometimes I lose my train of thought and just fall into a little gap. I'm used to that too, so just bear with me. When we speak of choosing wisely, and when we speak of bringing our actions of body, speech, and mind into alignment with our purpose as bodhisattvas, to liberate ourselves from ignorance and confusion and suffering in order to become liberators of beings, in order to establish all beings in right mind, the link between that intention and our ability to do that consistently, day after day, minute by minute, second by second, lifetime after lifetime, is the mind that can recognize itself, its condition in a moment. For this, we cultivate an inward attention. And I think I touched yesterday at one point, maybe just briefly or in passing, on how We are all able to recognize what's moving in our minds, and we are all able to discern, even if it's just lightly and we move on without paying too much attention to it, we're able to discern the signals from awareness of whether we're on track or whether we're not on track. Signals of danger, signals of discomfort. Often we go right past them because we have our mind fixed on something we're wanting, a direction that we want to go in, a result that we want to accomplish, and this little, there's an aspect of the, yes, I remember yesterday I said, yes, for me it's on the right-hand side, right here. There is in our awareness, the capacity to, our awareness is able to recognize when our consciousness is about to have a fit or to get caught in something really deleterious, or when there's an inner conflict between, I know I oughta, but what I really wanna. When that kind of inner conflict is going on, it could be at a very trivial level, like about, pudding, or it can be at a level that's very, that's profoundly impactful in your history of lifetimes. And the awareness can see the moment when that pattern is about to be reactivated, and you are about to do again that which you have done so many times before without ever seeing that you were doing it, without ever acknowledging, and that has brought you to a place where suffering continues to recur in this lifetime. The seeds of which you won't be able to identify specific moments. Rinpoche says the more serious your suffering, the less likely you will be able to go back into a past lifetime, or maybe even in this life, to identify a moment of cause. But that's not really a problem, because we identify by the effect. If you're having great suffering, you've created a cause for it, and you can look. One of the ways you can look at that process is, what kind of suffering is this? What kind of causes create this kind of suffering? And then you know what cause you do not want to set down another seed for in this lifetime. All of this is information. It's just grist for the mill that wants to take better responsibility, increasing responsibility, and finer responsibility at every level of one's development on the path of the Bodhisattva, which is the path to ultimate enlightenment. And responsibility and power are just simply synonymous on the path. So, I have had in the past months the opportunity to look, just to give a personal, I'm not going to give the information about the personal experience, but the karmic experience. I've had the opportunity to see that I have been caught in a kind of a repetitive cycle of suffering that I'd kind of get into, and then I'd pull myself out, and I'd practice, and I'd beg for help on the floor of my cave. And I have, yes, I have spent a fair amount of time on the floor of my cave, which is an indoor cave, not an outdoor cave. And in a few weeks, I'm going to be 80 years old. That's a long time. And I've been looking into my experience and my mind through one lens or another pretty much all of those years. I came in very curious about what this was that I was coming into. I haven't been a quick study in figuring out how to be a human being. But I'm sure I'm not alone in that. But it only recently, it's just embarrassing but funny. It's more funny than it is embarrassing. only recently have I put myself face to face with the nature of the cause that would bring about this result that I've been having difficulty with. And it was like, have you seen in cartoons when somebody goes, well, duh, you know? It was as if this information right in front of my face, probably for countless lifetimes, about the specific kind of wrongdoing that I have engaged in specific lifetimes, which I will never have any memory of probably, but that's the source of this suffering that I was experiencing. And I burst into tears, and then I burst out laughing. It was almost simultaneous, because the relief of seeing the cause of your own suffering and the cause of the suffering of many, many beings who has shared the kind of suffering that you're experiencing, the relief of seeing that is the relief of being given the key that opens the lock of your helplessness, your perceived or experienced helplessness, to create causes of happiness for yourself and others, of well-being, of spiritual enlightenment. If you don't see it in your own mind stream very directly and clearly, you can hypothesize about it based on what kinds of causes produce what kinds of effects, but that has no comparison with the immense relief that comes with actually directly seeing that's what I've been doing. I've been doing that. It may be followed by chagrin or mortification or despair or whatever, but that moment is your moment when you can say, now, in this moment, seeing clearly my confusion that has led to my acts of wrongdoing of this specific kind, right now, I free myself from that. Right now, I tell my mind to pay attention and to be awake to every instant when that seems to reactivate at the level of thought, at the level of speech, at the level of activity. That is what I mean when I talk about fine-grained, or fine understanding, and a fine assumption of responsibility, that we are assuming the responsibility that is rightly ours to assume, and it's a step into freedom. Otherwise, we're imprisoned by our own minds and what they have been creating over and over and over again. And of course, this is only one seed that I'm talking about. It's not to even look at the whole panoply of seeds that one has created cause with over many, many lifetimes. But the ones that are giving you the hardest time, those are the ones to pay attention to, because those are the ones where the door is just about ready to pop open for you. When it really, when we have to face something, the thing to face is what's in our face. So whatever is the hardest thing for you to deal with, turn your attention there. And really ask, inwardly, ask, show me. May I see, please. Please, Guru, help me. And all my friends, spiritual friends in all domains, please help me see how I keep creating that unhappiness for myself and others. That harm that I continue to do, even as the very well-intentioned bodhisattva, continuing to create a specific kind of harm. What a window. And not just to look through, but pull up the sash and leap through that window. Take full responsibility. This is freedom. And then that's not what I was going to talk about, but I think it was good. Because we don't think of karma this way, right? So when we hear Chogyam Rinpoche, someone whose wisdom is just radiant, and whose embodiment is love, limitless and all-pervading. When we hear him say, I have great faith in karma, then you'll hear, over whatever side you hear best from, you'll hear a little whisper of Barbara saying, I'm learning that too. I'm learning to have faith in karma and see it as a doorway to freedom. And I invite you to read the chapter in our book on karma. It is more specific in how we create karma, how that happens. The main thing it's speaking to about the moment of creation of karma is that, as Rinpoche says, the karmic seed is one particular thought or one particular afflictive emotion in one moment, not recognized. That's the karmic seed. Remember how the teachings in the Bardo tell us that recognition and liberation are simultaneous? What we're going to go to next is how that happens. So this would not be the moment to turn off your live stream feed. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about how that happens. Okay?